I'm Jennifer. I work as a cultural worker in doing different roles, and I'm probably more known as the co-founder of Post Museum, and I work primarily with Post Museum. So we are an art and social space, and we do lots of exhibitions and events and different things. And then I also do a little bit of writing and some artwork. Yeah, so very happy to join the GL project this time, and it's great to see lots of wonderful works with a lot of really nice people. Okay, your turn.
Hello everyone, I'm Shin, but I guess sometimes I make work under the pen name Keshu Ye. I am born and bred in Singapore, but right now I live in the UK. My artistic identity quite conflicted, that's why maybe the pen name as sort of like a bit safer maybe, because I'm not really, I have a lot of strange ideas, but I think primarily, yes, I am an artist, but there's a lot of conflict around that. But I'm very happy when I can be making work. Yeah. And this is the second time I'm working with part of an artist project, and sorry, I am looking off screen because I don't find it very comfortable looking at myself, but maybe I should be looking at you, right, Jen? Because I'm like talking to you.
Something else and watch it too.
Okay, no, because the it's facing the window, so yeah, so I'm like staring at the sky. But yeah, sorry, my eyeline should come back here. Okay, second time with AC people. And I'm very pleased they asked me even though I'm very far away. So the last time was the residency at Bukit Timah. That was manicured nature, and that was awesome. Thank you. And yeah, like Jen, I'm very excited to be sort of seeing old friends and meeting new friends as part of this collaboration. Yeah, I think when I first look at your work, and then also your artistic statement, I mean, I call it a poem. I was just sort of blown away by how concise and succinct everything was. And it's one of those statements where you read it and then you look at the work and it makes sense. It's not like, you know, you look at the work and then you look at the statement, huh? And also there's sort of, it's interesting because, like, you know, right at the center of it, there's something very, very personal. And then you sort of zoom out into this public road directory that anybody can look at. Yeah, so there's sort of the interesting contrast there. And I was wondering about your journey of making this work. How you came about sort of you know, I guess this is your maternal grandmother.
My dad's mom.
Oh no, sorry, your dad's mom. So your paternal grandmother. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, I guess the journey of thinking about using these photos, and then sort of, you know, contrasting it with the actual place, and then situating it in the neighborhood.
Okay. Actually, I was thinking of making work of my another grandma, my mother's mother, because I remember reading this thing about how we already exist in our grandmother's body when they gave birth to our mom or something like that. So I was actually looking for, I read it like a while ago, and then so I was actually looking for this text online, but somehow I couldn't find it. And then but then I found this other text, other writing that was talking about how actually our father's mother is the grandparent who, okay, only women, who has given us like 26% of our genes. So in other words, for women, our father's mother kind of takes up most of our genes, right? Yeah, 1% more than all the other grandparents. So then I decided that, okay, then maybe I should do something about my father's mother instead, because of the title Genetic Landscape. So I thought that I wanted to do something that is that talks about this extra percent of genes that's in us. And also because this grandma passed away when I was 2, not even 2 actually. So I actually have no recollection of her at all. And the only kind of physical thing that I have is this, are these photographs in my hand. And then I thought of trying to do something with these photographs and linking it to actual spaces, and also then to where these spaces are on the map. So the photographs are the only thing kind of that is really still the same from when they were taken, because these are original. I didn't like redevelop them. And the physical spaces themselves have changed, and then these maps are from those years. So 1954, 1975, and 1978. So these maps were from the past. So I went. So the image in the middle, actually, I lived there when I was a child, and that's where these photographs are taken. So the building is pretty much the same, and I used to live in the corner unit, so that's the corner where the photograph is. And the building is the same, but the windows have changed. And even though the building is still there, I don't have access to the space anymore. So there's a few different ideas. I think there's the exterior, some of the exterior may or may not be different, but the interior is no longer the same anyway, and I don't have access to it anymore. So it's kind of talking about memories as well as spaces, as well as time, that it kind of, you're just kind of cut off from that time.
Yeah, there's a very nice sort of passing of time that I feel within your the work. And then it's interesting that it's sort of the color as well, the photograph versus the actual place, and then the map again.
Somehow the maps are these colors in I used the one map.sg, and then I don't know why they didn't standardize the colors, but these are the actual. I didn't do any changing of colors, right?
Yeah. Also, like the first map that was from, is it 1954 at Pierce Reservoir?
Yeah.
That's like from the National Archive. Still got the chief surveyor.
Yeah, that's why I chose this map because I like the stamp. Yeah. The middle one is actually blur. I don't know why when they scanned it or something, it wasn't clear. Yeah. Then the last one just looks like blueprint, right?
Were there any sort of particular memories that were invoked for you during this making the work, and sort of revisiting the place via the map, and when you go back and take the photograph?
The first one, no, I actually never been there. It's just outside the Island Club, Island Country Club, and it's really near to actually where I can't remember what it's called now, Windsor Park. There's like some new parks that and parks have built up along that Thompson Road area. Yeah, so I've actually never explored that area, but I did when I went to take a photo of this place. It's quite nice. So no old memories there. The middle one, I kind of stayed there till I was maybe 9 or 10. So actually, I don't really have very strong memories, but there are a lot of photographs from that. We took a lot of photographs in this apartment. So birthday parties and mostly birthday parties and like just hanging out kind of photographs. Yeah, so my early childhood was spent in the apartment in the middle. And then the last is actually my I only found out later, but actually my grandma and my granddad lived in the same apartment, the one in the middle. But when she was diagnosed with cancer, my granddad actually bought the house, which is the last photo. And then because he wanted to move her to a quieter place, he continued living there as well. So throughout my growing up years until he passed away, until my granddad passed away, we would visit him in this house. Yeah. So
in the last photo.
Yeah, in the last photo. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then actually, yeah, maybe next one I'll make something about my grandpa, but yeah, we have grandpa works to make. I think it's a really nice house. The trees you can see in the photo now, they were not there when we were there. We used to have one of those chain fence, like with the cross, like just wires, with crossing wires. And then we have this maiden's jealousy, this vine with the yellow flowers. So that was the fence, but it's all changed now. Yeah, so yeah, there are lots of memories in that house as well. But yeah, it's not really about memories, so I don't really want to talk too much about memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess so previously, I mean, when I saw your work, I only saw it sort of one page at a time. It's interesting to see it sort of, together, and it sort of makes me feel like, I come from a film background, so I have this image of you sort of, with a body cam that's mounted on you. So wherever you're walking, the image is quite steady.
Yeah.
Because then it looks like you're taking a photo, and it's like, is it here? Is it here? So that's sort of the feeling of like, searching in that sense. Yeah, so it's quite sort of quite filmic, because it's like, the time, the season can pass, and then the places change, but then you're holding this photo from this particular time. And I think you mentioned that all 3 photos were taken on the same day, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, because I guess, like, in those days, like, photography is obviously sort of not as commonplace, and like, they probably developed this in the lab, right?
Yeah.
So the roll of film, you cannot sort of, you tend to use it sparingly.
Yeah, not like now, right? With the digital camera or with the phone.
Yes. Right. Bursts, unheard of, man. Yeah, so that's sort of something very somewhat nostalgic about the work, but also interesting that you said, it's not really about memories.
I think in a way it's kind of personal. I would say in a way it's kind of also a universal experience, because we all have this kind of like this time in our lives which is, which remains in our mind, or which remains in objects, but we cannot actually go there anymore. So I was kind of like trying to think about how to represent that in a way.
Yeah, it's sort of describing the absence in a way, or like how sometimes when photo itself becomes the memory instead of sort of our actual experience of the actual event, because probably because you were so young here, you probably don't actually remember looking at your grandma.
No, I have no memory of her.
Yeah, because also, I mean, as part of my training doing art therapy, so one of the things we think about is sort of the early childhood period. And so between the years of 0 to 3, um it seems like children, we as in children, we generate we do generate memories, but it can be very subconscious. So it's an interesting idea for me to think about how like the things that we think we cannot remember are like latent.
Right.
And then yeah, I'm wondering whether there was maybe like a particular smell or something that sort of, when you were visiting the places, or that sort of made you feel quite familiar or not.
Not really. Actually, Singapore is so small that I do have somewhat of a habit of visiting places that I like. I mean, or that have some kind of meaning to me. So I do visit. Like I go to Balestier, I go to Bukit Timah quite often. Not often, but maybe like once a year at least I will go to these places, and so it's not like it's not really how do you say, it's not really like if I miss New York and then I want to go, that it's not that difficult to go. So to me, in a way, it is still precious, but it's not so difficult for me to reconnect. Yeah, but the other thing with memories is also that your memories change all the time, right? Every time you remember something, it morphs into something else. So to me, it's kind of a feeling at the end of the day more than an actual recap of things that happen. Yeah. So like smells and sounds and all that, not really anything comes to mind. I think it's just nice to walk around and see what has changed, what's still there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But you must have this kind of a similar feeling too, because you live far away now, right? So when you come back to Singapore, do you also go to the same places and things like that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know why your question is making me feel a bit emotional. No, because it is making me think of I think so. I have been in the UK about 10 years. And I think before I left, I mean, I didn't know that I was going to be here that long. But before I left, there's also, that sort of, there are all these places I want to visit, to these places that I have good memories at or with. But then, I mean, because Singapore changes very fast, a lot of places where I actually feel like, I had significant memories or moments at, they vanish even when I was there, So I remember I was sort of thinking about in the name of progress and development, with like Singapore is a bit like this demolition machine, demolition of our memories. But then I also found it interesting that, I mean, obviously the change is not as rapid as my parents' generation. So, but then like my parents seem to, like, on the surface, they seem to like ease quite well into these things. Like, they might talk about like some places with, some nostalgia, but they don't seem bothered that it's gone. Like, it's sort of, they're quite accepting of the fact that, oh, it's like that. Last time it was like that, now it's something else. Yeah. Whereas I feel like I actually feel a bit sad about it. It's like something, cannot hold on to. Yeah. yeah, so I mean, I think for a while I was sort of trying to keep up with like, oh, what has changed since I last came back, sort of thing. But then, I mean, now it's very hard to keep up because I'm quite preoccupied here as well. And then also it's like now that I'm here, I'm thinking I should be keeping up with the things here. There's like too many things to keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess so. It's your little poem. I like how it sort of it begins and ends in a way where it's like X marks, X remains. And then I mean you sort of have a bit of the journey of the work in a way, and it's just it's very short and sweet, and I feel the work is very accessible and it's quite poignant, and I guess there's sort of this very real sense of the private space and public space sort of contrast between the body and the land. Is that a theme that you often sort of come back to, or is it something new?
I think it's something that I've always been interested in. I guess as humans, we cannot get out of this, time and space, this 3D world, right? So, and being born in this time and being, situated in Singapore, I think it is almost like a precondition. I mean, to me, it's something that is something that's existing. Besides our body or whatever we are born with, right? This land and this time that we are in is something that we cannot really get rid of, and so to me, it's something that I have been interested to investigate and to think about. So I guess in I would say most of the things that I've done and I'm doing, I think it is always, in a way connected to this time and space thing. I mean, we can kind of say that for almost every artist, I guess. But for me, I was really quite interested in what is Singapore, and also what is the Singaporean identity thing. That was okay maybe in more than 10 years ago. I was more interested in it. Now I'm kind of like quite sick of it because it's not really. I think I'm generally not so interested in identity politics anymore. But I see that a lot of people are really struggling with it or trying to make sense of it at the moment. But for me right now, I think I'm really more interested in the land issue, use of land, development, this kind of thing. And also, I mean, with the whole climate crisis issue, I think I'm really more interested to think more about how we can use the land and how we can live with the land and all these things. Yeah. So it's kind of changed a little bit, the focus of what I'm interested in. Yeah.
Talk about land use also, yeah, I straight away sort of thought about the climate change issues, because land use is a very big part of why there is climate change and how we can mitigate the effects. But it's also sort of very, very politically charged.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess so my last question for you is, not exactly regarding the work. I guess it's more regarding your role when I was back in Singapore.
Okay, let me.
Yeah, post museum is like, you know, the X. It's like last time substation and S11 was also another X spots, like, you know, because there's sort of so much discussions after event, or like, you know, going to visit exhibitions, or when the National Library was still there. Yeah, so I feel, post museum itself is definitely a big landmark for me. Um, yeah, so I guess, sorry, back to the question, I digress. I think you occupy sort of an interesting role where you make your own works, but you are also sort of curating and enabling other works through having created this space. And because, you know, post museum also used to have a lot of social events, so there's sort of a lot of civil action, you know, that comes from it. And then you had this really wonderful cafe space, you know, where there's a lot of interesting discussions. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess, how do you feel in terms of sort of between the two, of being able to create work and curating work? Yeah.
I think as with a lot of places or cities around the world, um, you know, governments and businesses are only interested in like nationalistic or like commercial work, artwork. I mean, obviously for their own purposes. That's why it's really important for people in the arts community to start their own initiatives and to really help one another out. And I think being able to, I think everyone is able to help someone else, but and actually the idea of a community is really important, because we don't survive, we are not islands. I mean, we really need one another. We don't exist as islands, see. So what I'm trying to say is that I think everyone can do something to make the community stronger, and to really try to create opportunities for ourselves and for other people. And these things that we as artists or we as practitioners do, we don't and we shouldn't do it with the same intentions that governments and businesses do it. When we create space, we really, I think we really want to think about how we can create maybe safe. I don't like the word safe space, but because there's too much it's too political in a way, in a bad way for me. But I think we can create a space where people are friendly and open, and even though we may have differing ideas or we have conflicts, we are able to kind of try to understand and learn from one another. I think we can create spaces where we can help one another out in various ways, and we can just create spaces where people can come together. There's so many things that we can do, really. And I think I think especially as visual artists don't often have the desire to work with other people. You know, a lot of visual artists are very happy just doing their own thing in their own space. But actually, it's important as people that we come together, especially when things are stacked against us. So I think with Post Museum, we do want to try to see how far we can, how far as an open space can go. I think we tried to make it as open as possible. I mean, obviously there are a lot of constraints, but I think also it was the space in Royal Road was really an experiment that we were doing with everyone who came. So I think a lot of people came with expectations which we were not able to meet because we were actually not setting out to meet these expectations. So there's a lot of complicated, complex stuff. But yeah, it was a very interesting thing. Yeah.
Do you mind if while you're talking, I'll share? I think I know I have a folder called Post Museum Last Day.
Oh my god, really? Okay, I want to see.
Do you mind to share it?
Yes. And I think, I mean, just to talk about, spaces that kind of try to bring people together and do things for the community. I was just talking to my friend in Tokyo, and he has run this space called Art Center Ongoing he has run this space for like 12 years. And actually because of this, pandemic, he might have to close it. And it's not like a super famous art space in Tokyo because there's so many spaces. But he has really, over the years, impacted a lot of people with his work. Oh, that's nice. Given space to a lot of young artists and things like that. So it's really actually a lot of hard work and a lot of resources that go into this kind of things. But the rewards are really also invaluable lah. I remember.
Is this Xiao Yan Mei Xian in the corner? Is this Xiao Yan Mei Xian in the right hand corner or left hand?
Yes, I think so.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
It's making me think of your work, Tim. Monument, the Post Museum. Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing. This one is still there. Now he's got aliens around him.
Oh.
UFOs.
Thanks for sharing. I mean, yes, I think you're definitely right about sort of spaces that allow for people to come together, for communities to come together for sort of more open reasons other than work and leisure purposes.
Yeah, but actually hanging out is a big part of what artists do, right?
Right.
I mean, it's still work in a way because we don't have working hours and the process. I think for a lot of us, the process is quite tied to also just meeting people, talking about ideas, and experiencing life, different things. So it's not so hanging out is important. That's the very skinny Tian.
Oh.
When was this photo taken? Oh, 2011.
August, 2011. Is this literally the last day, or is it? I don't know whether it's because there's the last day I was being able to visit or something.
I have to check. It's around those few days. I think one of the days for sure.
Yeah. Very nostalgic.
I'll show him this photo later. Thanks for the photos.
I can send you. Yeah, I'll share with you you want the whole folder?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, can.
Yeah. We
Oh,
wanted
this one
like one
really
of
very fun. Hello, Xiaoyun. Hello.
I think it's Xiaoyun eh. I
believe it is.
Should
I
be.
think it is. And it also looks like my same side profile.
Oh, is it? Maybe when I was having long hair.
Got you guys back into the chat. No more questions.
Okay, let me ask you about yours.
Okay.
So why a pop-up? Tell me something about why pop-up and how it's changed from, you know, an actual pop-up to one that you make yourself.
So when I think when Joey first started telling us about this, so it's interesting because I guess usually I'm more used to sort of working with I guess either a theme, which is usually sort of an overarching theme, or like a site specific like location. Yeah. So this one, it's interesting because it was liberating because there's a very big theme, genetic landscape, but also that we knew what the format was going to be. It was going to be a zine. And it's very exciting for me to think of it as a zine because, I mean, it's very familiar sort of in terms of, like, zines are, independent publishing, is very handmade, and yeah, I guess I sort of think of zines as artist books. But then because I sort of like the idea of something very tactile. That, I mean, I love those big sort of, like the big, like coffee table books or something. I think it's that format. So like, they have really nice photos and everything. And I do use a lot of photography in my work, but there's something I feel about photography, at least for me at present, where it's sort of a disconnect sometimes because it still feels very flat. Either that or I'm a rubbish photographer. I really wanted to make something tactile. But also I guess I've always loved pop-up books because there's something sort of magical about sort of surprise when you open up the book, like ta-da, this thing turns up at you. And it's fun, and I guess pop-up is sort of 3D. So yeah, I was thinking of doing a pop-up, but then of course after that, the logistics of thinking of how to mass produce the pop-up, that was the challenge. And then I was talking to them about sort of the logistic issues and all that, and then because I think it also depends a lot on like the publisher, so maybe, and I guess so because I was so excited about the pop-up, I think like probably shared this in the first meeting. So I was sort of just experimenting, and then so I just we get a lot of pamphlets. So I was just doing some like random things, not really having an idea, but sort of so this was something I was thinking about, sort of tension, because like if I do this, it's sort of when the page opens up, but then at the same time, so I don't know why I was thinking I had 4 hands, because then I want to pull here and pull here, so like tension going upwards and sidewards, and yeah, but then obviously I don't have 4 hands, and then also sort of like spiral, or it has this feel where it's quite inviting to bring you like sort of bring somebody inside, but it's very so initially I was thinking, oh, okay, maybe if I can laser cut this, then I can send it to the AC people. But I was like, I cannot make them sweatshop workers, like I cannot ask them to glue in like 200 copies, right? Yeah. And then so I sort of abandoned the idea for a while, but then I'm still very attracted to it. And then couldn't get away from it, because there's that tactile thing where you sort of have to think about like the thickness of the paper, whether it can stand by itself, and things like that, how soft and how like it needs to fall flat, but then at the same time it needs to have the sort of thing. I guess sometimes I sort of just doodle with a penknife and printed printed catalogs, and then so through one of my doodles, I mean, just then it sort of happens like random stuff, and then later I can't remember where it was, but the back and forth conversation was that, oh, maybe I can get the reader to do the pop-up. So you co-opt the reader as a sweatshop worker. No, but not a sweatshop worker, because essentially they're doing their own work. Then it evolved to, my piece became about, I interpret genetic landscape as, from a parenting perspective. So I think it's interesting because we both our teams have sort of this family link. Yeah. And actually, I was thinking, I mean, like what you said earlier, about visual artists as people who don't really want to work with other people. And I was thinking, oh, Jen has hit it. So I'm not a visual artist. And hence going back to my conflict about artistic identity, because actually I realized that it's not the first time that I am getting the audience as collaborator. It's actually been a very active part of my practice, because in Manicured Nature as well, I did like a mushroom trail where I provided a map of fictitious mushrooms. And then I think I gave them, is it like a torchlight and a magnifying glass in a sort of like a kit. And I say, oh, like feel free to take one of these and then go for a walk and look for these mushrooms that you may possibly find. But, mushrooms are pretty elusive to begin with. So I guess for that project, yeah. So again, it's like the viewer as collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess it sort of evolved from a very practical point of view.
But it's also cool that now it's become like a more like, participatory artwork.
Right.
I don't think that's all visual artists, but a lot of visual artists who just work in the studio, like doing their painting or that, they don't really have desire to work with other people. But there are actually a lot of artists who create works which involve a lot of other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my title has also evolved into a very collaborative statement, which is, now look at what we have made. I found this old piece of writing from my previous sketchbooks, and it sort of seemed to resonate with the theme of parenting. I did rewrite it a bit to include the DNA line, but it's partly inspired by your ex poem, because I was thinking, wow, Jen's poem very nice, short and sweet. I wish I could do something like that.
Yours is much more poetic than mine.
But yours reads very nice. There's a nice flow to it. Yeah. The original piece of this thing was well, it's quite new to me. But so when my kids were born here in the UK, it was sort of quite almost like a normal thing that they carry baby in slings, young babies. So it was. I say new because like my sister never did it when she got pregnant and had her kid, and I think like in my parents' time, it's even rare to see somebody have like, sort of a sarong thing. But then it seems to be sort of quite common now. So yeah, sorry, I digress. So this was from a sketch, sort of thinking about the slings and how, we are carrying the baby sort of on the outside instead of on the inside of the tummy. So I think in sort of parenting writing, sometimes they talk about the fourth trimester, where you have delivered the baby, but the baby still needs you. Yeah, then the baby's in the sling. Yeah, sorry, did I answer your question?
Yes. But you also mentioned previously that in our talk the other day that you got some people to try out this DIY thing.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did that go?
Okay, so I have literally just received feedback yesterday. There were some questions calling me back and saying, I don't understand this. What do you mean by fold paper to side A? So it's quite interesting process for me here, because it's sort of I did my work and then I have to do it backwards. It's like I have to show people how I did it so that they can make it again. And I've not had to do this previously before, so I'm sort of still experimenting with the way that I should do it, like how the instructions should be like. And because thinking about sort of the integrity of the work in terms of you might not want to have the notes in the finished work, so how would that work? So it is still a work in progress. I have not unfortunately finished, but so it's I'm doing it through a process of folding and cutting. Yeah, I think it's the last page.
Yeah, but like Yoko Ono's grapefruit, right? Yeah, I mean that, it's just a set of instructions, and but there may or may not have to be the correct answer, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it wasn't really so much the answer, but so there's the so one of my friends, she managed to do it until sort of the very last bit. So well, this will definitely be in the instructions, but if you can see in the picture here, there's sort of a connection between the different pages. And if you look at the first picture on the left, the very last bit, there's sort of like a paper doll, and then you're supposed to sort of loop the end of the spiral into the heart of the paper doll. But because my friend had interpreted it wrongly, and then she actually cut out the whole paper doll, so there was no heart to loop the thing into. And there's sort of I guess as a well, whenever you make any work and then after you sort of put it out there, then it's open for people's interpretation, right? So I think the challenge with this one was while I welcome any sort of welcome any sort of thing that happens, because as part of the process of the creation, and in this case the reader's creation, but there's something about sort of they may not or may, I mean, it's obviously lovely when they bring new things into the picture, like things that I've never thought about, that helps them associate further. But I guess the thing for me was, I mean, sort of, will they see the point of my work if they are missing some elements of it? Yeah, but I guess so. I'm looking at it where my work is there's sort of two components, and the experiential component of doing this is also very important to me. Yeah, so because I feel like sort of I'm bringing people through the different pages in a sense. Yeah, something like that. What was the original question?
I don't remember. Oh, no. I think the last one was whether there's a right answer. Yeah, but we kind of said that.
I think I think I also had this discussion with you where we were thinking about so should we show, so essentially the work becomes like a template in a sense. And it's like, so then should I actually show people what the original thing was? And maybe, I don't know, maybe some people might get sort of like frustrated halfway, and then like they don't do it anymore, and or they're thinking, oh wow, this is so rubbish, why don't you just show me your artwork, like, why do I have to do it, and all these things. I mean, sort of it passed through my head, but I was thinking, oh, so this is to show you the process, like, because sometimes when we do work also, you do something and then you scrunch out the paper and throw it away and say, oh, this is rubbish. So in a way, but also, I mean, there's sort of the sense of danger also, because I think initially I was thinking, oh, I'm asking them to cut into the zine that they bought, and it's like, what if you accidentally cut other people's work? Like, I don't want to be responsible for destroying other people's work, that kind of thing. But then I think I sort of just embraced the risk factor.
I think that's why they must buy 2 copies. One is to, one is to cut.
I agree.
So we need to package it as a pack, because we need to tell them that there's an activity component to this. And then just in case your activity, you have a variation.
People buy model, right? They buy one model to keep and one model to make. Then they showcase the one they make. Then the other one keep in the box. Don't touch one. Yeah, collector's item.
Yes.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So essentially, they just want to collect the packaging, right?
They need to collect
if they don't
as a whole thing in, and when you pass it on to whoever you pass it on to, then they will have to imagine what is inside the box. So it's a pristine, it's almost as if you have a living thing inside that that you haven't give birth to yet. So then that's the other one that you make just so you can see it. Well, at least from my experience with my husband, he does that as well.
Yeah, because actually once you open it, you tear out the packaging, that is not valuable anymore already. Yeah, so you have to keep it, packed and everything, untouched. Yeah.
But then there's that desire to make it, you see, to like.
So you must have,
yeah, so you must have at least 2. Okay,
no,
back
but
to you.
it sounds to me like a mummification of the thing. Like we have 2 antennas. One is like, oh, this is the what it looks like on the package, because obviously usually on the package they show you like the complete thing, or like all the different variations you can do, because it's enticing you to purchase this item, right? And then the other one is where you actually do it. Yeah. So maybe I can develop it such that it has a pull-out component, so that they can work differently. But no, that is a publisher thing again, because whether our publisher can do the preparation, right? Yeah.
GL2, GL1 going to print already.
Yes. I know. Sorry.
keep that for GL2. Would love that, but keep that for GL2.
for the exhibition lah, maybe.
Oh yeah, the exhibition.
Hmm.
You may even consider like the collaboration with your readers to like offer them the opportunity to show
Finish.
show their variation.
Yeah, I guess the part of me that's very curious is also about sort of, I was hoping whether like people could write just like a line or 2, or just have some description about sort of how they feel about having to make the work, or the experience of making the work. Yeah.
So are you going to make more like these cutting and folding artworks? Do you
Mm,
play? No? I think there's a lot of potential in this.
yeah, probably. I mean, I think sometimes that's just sort of the way I doodle. Yeah, one of the things I was sort of thinking about was, oh, actually, this one is sort of an artist edition book, right? You know, because it's a commercial catalog. But, you know, because I've done sort of, you know, just like random things in it. So it's like, you know, I didn't realize after I cut, and it's like, I cut out her stomach bit, you know, like what does it mean? And then like, you know, like sort of the windows and whatever. And it's sort of, I was thinking, it's quite elegant as a catalog, right? Like, you know, holes in like random places. Yeah, but I mean, obviously it's not going to sell their product. So I think for now it's sort of playing with things. And yeah, there is sort of potential to carry on further. Yeah, if I get the time to do it.
Yeah, you're key to
my
help.
current 3-year-old and 6-year-old project take up a lot of time.
What about them doing it?
So my 6-year-old can appreciate pop-up books, and I mean my 3-year-old also can, but because he's very curious, and then developmentally they don't have that like control yet, where it's like, okay, you can see but don't touch, okay, and then done already. And it's like not my stuff, it's just like, you know, the books that we have. Yeah, so I'm very cautious if I share any pop-up books with them, especially my 3-year-old. My 6-year-old is fine. Yeah, but so I mean, he just has sort of very curious hands, and he just wants to find out why, how, and then he's got all these questions. So it's fascinating, but it's like then there's the, you know, danger element. Then, but it's like I also feel bad if I tell him, don't touch, you know, don't do this, don't do that. And it's like, you know, in the museum, see, don't touch. And I guess, you know, because there's so much that we can. I mean, I guess I'm a big believer of sort of being able to play with things and not being too precious about things. But then, you know, they're saying this as somebody who has books sort of kept away in the higher shelves where they cannot reach. So maybe in a few years' time, you know, when he's able to sort of appreciate how delicate this pop-up things are. I have a box where it's like things that I have to fix, that the yeah, you know, gluing, taping back things that like they accidentally, you know, rip or stuff. Like some can be saved, some need a lot more effort.
I mean, there is a kind of an online group of artist parents, so I should send you the link. You can
okay.
Remind me.
Are these parents based in Singapore? Is it?
I think
it's
anywhere. Yeah.
Mm.
I just found out about it. I mean, obviously, because
Okay.
I don't know, but I can let you know later.
Cool, thanks.
Support group is good.
Yes.
You know, Shinshin,
It's
I never thought about that until now that you mention it, right? I have this collection of it's not even complicated, it's just Garfield comics, right? But it's so old. It's like the first edition of Garfield comics. And then I bought it secondhand when I was in secondary school. So it's really old. So my nephew came to Singapore and then they decided to ransack my bookshelves. I'm like, yeah, take whatever you want to read. And when they left, it was in, like, it has broken off its spine. And they were like, "Ayi, this is it." I'm like, okay. Then I'm like, is this because there is I have several collections of it. So I think it broke off. They didn't give it to me immediately, so they just stuffed it back into whichever one. I'm like, are they in the same Is this collection 1? Or is this a combination of collection 1 and collection 2? You just stuff everything into the...
No.
So now it's I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Right, don't touch this for a moment, okay? Don't touch it for the next few years, actually. So I actually go online and now I'm trying to read, okay, is this how many? Trying to make it fixed back together. So I get you. Just to share. Don't have to be parent, I also get you.
And now we can open the questions up to the floor.
Yes. Thoughts and questions and feedback. I got a lot. I got notes. Okay, I'm gonna do a last word thing again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I feel like both your sharing really brought out the inception feelings for me. Like with Jen, right? Some question that came to my mind about your work was also relating to my discussion with Kai about the a physical dementia. Like we will start to lose our memory before we are even losing our memory, just because of how these physical cues are disappearing. And then with the images that you shared, then I was thinking about this talk that I heard, this podcast I was listening to. The question was this. The question that was asked from the podcast was this: did that really happen? How our memory betray us? And then, of course, it's really thinking about the our recollections being essentially reconstructions of what we think we have experienced, right? Which is not always a bad thing, because then this brings me to the next point, which is the inception part, where we started to talk about post-museum and how post-museum, to all of us, at least in this chat so far, right, we all agree that it has injected this sense that the way that I hear it from you, Jen, is that it's like a social experiment to put together people in a place of possibility. It's almost like a liminal space where things can happen. We are going to support you. Do it. We allow you to think about this. It's an allowing space. And as such, you have the space, the idea, the possibility is inserted into the people who walk into the space, because then you essentially or post-museum and the photos and this whole talk really just really talk about really give me the idea of like inserting possibilities. So the idea of inception happens here. And so with Chin Chin, when you mention about this allowing, again, is that allowing of your audiences to interpret instructions to then create this possibility, and then struggling between like, okay, I'm going to give you these instructions, like does the instructions make sense? And then you step into a third person almost. I feel that besides giving that space, you also step out of that space to relook your instructions, to consider things like material quality of constructions. Would this work? Would this move? Would this how would people interpret it? I think the way that you're so meticulous in these constructions almost resemble the actual building of a physical space, of a physical thing, but it is that real. So all in all, my feeling is this inception feeling, like planting a seed. Both of you are planting seeds into people's mind to say that this can happen. this is real, or offering them the opportunity to grow something from the seed that you planted. That's my take on it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a very lovely way of putting it. Yeah. Lumping the people together with possibility.
As much lumping lah, must insert lah, be able to insert seeds into the mind of people. I think it's the whole construction of that is has to be something very, very thoughtful, very well thought out, because, you know, I mean, we can always insert bad things, right? But what we have here is inserting what we have here is I feel like inserting the possibilities, and possibility to recreate. I think that's what is important. That recreation is not limited to it's not controlled, but you both the works that I've seen, I mean the discussion and the works really feel like it's an offering of a petri dish to, like, this is a petri dish with the ready things for you to, you know, and these are the possibilities. How are you going to grow it? How are you going to then flourish this thought or this belief? I think that offers a lot to the audience to consider and then reconsider. It's not just telling them that this is my intention or this is my thoughts about this thing, but it's offering you the possibility of inserting your own interpretation, not just interpretation, but inserting your own possibility to ask them to think about what can this become and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think because essentially art and art making is about looking, about observing, about perspectives, I guess. Yeah, and I guess, you know, we I think it has come up in the other talks as well. A whole kaleidoscope of perspectives, and it's not just the general narrative, you know, that we consume. Like, I think with Tim and Shusia, they were talking about sort of, you know, the big, you know, narrative that is known, versus sort of like, I mean, I'm thinking sort of like, you know, the oral histories of ordinary people who live through all the different things. So it's like, it's just one thing has many viewpoints. And I think the nice thing about art is that it allows for that viewpoint. And also coming from, because I train as an art therapist, art psychotherapist. So one of the things about therapy is actually allowing ourselves to move between the viewpoints, because a lot of I mean, art therapy deals a lot with sort of mental health, and a lot of the mental health issues are when people are stuck and they cannot see beyond certain things, and they are living the reality of their stuckness, of that tunnel vision, you know, and once you can sort of, you know, let in a light or open up a window slowly when they are ready and things like that, that helps. So it's the shifting of the perception. Not to say that their perception is wrong and there's a correct perception. So there's no like right and wrong answer. But when you're able to move between, that is considered healthy and is considered a progress in terms of mental health. And I think like art is a wonderful way of sort of showing that the possibilities that you mentioned, Joey. Yeah, because I mean, like, yeah, it's amazing for me, you know, like Shusia, to think about the arm of the zombie growing mushrooms, glow in the dark mushrooms. And you know, for manicured nature, I am an aspiring mycologist. Yeah, so yeah, that was that.
I've been aspiring since then until now, never move forward.
Oh, I think the other thing with art is also that it actually offers a point or various points of connection between different people. So I think then we insert our own perspectives and also our own, and then we develop our own possibilities from there as well. So I think that's really quite interesting. And this whole project is really interesting because we all have very different ideas and very different perspectives, and it's all coming together. And I'm really looking forward to the cover. I'm not gonna give it away, but yeah, I think it's really interesting to see what will happen. And thank you for offering this chance for all of us. It's really nice.
Yeah. Artist Caravan.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being so committed, and we're gonna be there. Whoop whoop! Yeah. Yeah, anyone else have any thoughts? Okay, so I'm guessing silence means 没有, huh? Okay, see you guys later. Thank you so much for this session.
Bye. Take care.
下次见，拜拜。